To dissolve a 501c3, there is a process. There's sort of 4 or 5 elements that are related to the dissolution. Step 1 is that the board of directors needs to vote on the dissolution, okay? Which literally means you have to have a vote by your board members. The board members, to the extent their assets or liabilities, need to determine how are they going to satisfy the liabilities. If you have sufficient assets to satisfy the liabilities, then that's wonderful. You'll satisfy your liabilities, which means the creditors. And then to the extent that there's any excess assets remaining after satisfying the creditors, the board will have to determine what 501c3 organization will be the recipient or the assignee of these assets. It must be a 501c3. This is massively important that you understand this because it goes to the sort of heart and soul of the law surrounding 501c3 organizations, of which every single 501c3 has written into its articles of incorporation that in the event of dissolution, the assets are irrevocably dedicated to the benefit of the public, which means actually that it goes to another 501c3. So if you think that you're going to distribute assets to an individual or a corporation, you're thinking wrong. It's not going to happen. It's illegal. It may trigger very strict self-dealing rules and really substantial penalties. So do not sort of be confused by charities that just because you can dissolve, that somehow you can get the assets from the charity themselves. No, these assets need to go to another charity. Now that I've made that important point, after the board has ratified the dissolution, determined the 501c3 or more than one charitable beneficiary that's going to receive these assets, the assignee, it needs to now file something called a certificate of dissolution with the relevant state agency where it is domiciled to actually dissolve the entity. Not done yet, because actually just because you file that document, actually you have to get what they call tax clearance certificates from state tax agencies to say that you don't owe any state taxes. That tax clearance certificate will have to go to the Secretary of State or similar state agency for them to sign off on dissolving your entity. In addition to those particular documents that need to be filed, you also have to file a final tax return with the Internal Revenue Service, and the final tax return will, of course, notify the IRS that it is a final tax return. This is the last year of your existence, so to speak. In addition to that, typically you also indicate in the final tax return, whether it's a 990-PF or 990, where the funds or the assets have been distributed to as a resting place or final resting place. So the process of dissolution, again, comes from the board of directors having a vote, that vote being then turned into resolutions, including a charitable beneficiary to receive any excess assets that remain after the creditors have been satisfied. That's all approved by, on a state level, attorney general level, and then also a final tax return with the IRS. So a fairly lengthy process could take anywhere from 2 to 6 months to accomplish, but that takes you through the whole process of dissolution.